The hallway trembled with the echo of Jungkook's scream as he slammed the door behind him, his breath ragged, his eyes glassy with something deeper than fury. The sound cut through the silence of the dim backstage corridor like a blade, jolting Suga where he stood frozen in place, still clutching the envelope he never meant Jungkook to see. The air smelled faintly of metal and cold dust, as if the building itself held its breath, waiting for someone to break first. Jungkook didn't look back. Not even once. His steps were uneven, like each one might collapse beneath him. But he kept moving because stopping meant facing the truth he couldn't bear. Suga had lied to him. Lied in a way that ripped open the softest part of Jungkook's trust. He felt his hands shaking uncontrollably, his chest burning with a betrayal he didn't yet have the words to name. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew he couldn't stay. Suga stood there, stomach hollow, the envelope trembling slightly between his fingers. It held the confession he had written weeks ago, a confession of why he had pulled away, of the fear that gnawed at him, of the past he had never dared to share. But Jungkook had seen only the first page, just enough to misunderstand everything, just enough to believe Suga no longer wanted him near. It should have been simple to follow him, to call out his name, to fix it before it grew into something irreversible. Yet Suga felt something inside him lock tight, an old instinct telling him he didn't deserve to chase what he had already broken. The hallway flickered with the harsh fluorescent lights above, painting Suga's face in pale, brittle colors. He inhaled slowly, as if trying to stabilize the weight in his chest, but the air seemed too thin. He could still hear Jungkook's last words ringing in his skull, words laced with disbelief and trembling hurt. "So all this time, I meant nothing to you." Suga had tried to answer, but the words failed him, lodged somewhere deep beneath years of walls he had never learned to dismantle. Outside, rain smacked against the pavement, the cold air seeping into Jungkook's lungs as he stumbled into the night. He wasn't crying, not yet. His throat felt tight, as though something were pressing against it from the inside, but he refused to let a single tear fall where anyone could see. People passed him, blurred shapes in the downpour, unaware that his world had fractured in one swift, merciless moment. The city lights pulsed around him, neon pinks and blues smearing across the wet asphalt, reflecting a chaos that mirrored the war in his mind. He hated how his body still reacted to Suga's voice echoing in memory. Hated that his heart still twisted itself into knots at the thought of losing him. Hated that it felt like this wasn't the first time Suga had pushed him away, only the first time Jungkook didn't have the strength to chase him back. Suga finally moved, slow and mechanical, slipping the envelope back into his jacket with trembling hands. His palms were cold, almost numb, but the center of his chest burned, an ache deep and heavy, like grief waiting to bloom. He leaned against the wall, head tipped back, eyes closed tightly as the weight of what just happened pressed down on him. He wished he could rewind the last 15 minutes. Wished he could speak without fear strangling his voice. Wished he could be someone who didn't break the things he loved most. His breath unsteady, he whispered to the empty corridor, "You meant everything, Jungkook. You still do." But Jungkook was gone, swallowed by the rain outside, carrying a wound Suga had never intended to give. Jungkook kept walking until the street ahead blurred into streaks of white and gold beneath the storm. Every sound felt sharper than it should, the rush of cars, the distant honking, the patter of rain on umbrellas. It all made his heartbeat feel too loud in his ears. He found shelter beneath an overhang, leaning against a cold pillar, finally letting his lungs expand in a shaky exhale. He whispered Suga's name, barely audible, as if afraid the city might hear the truth he was too broken to admit. "Why didn't you fight for me?" His voice cracked on the last word, and he closed his eyes tightly to keep the tears from rising. But grief was patient. It seeped through the smallest cracks. Meanwhile, Suga pushed himself away from the wall, pacing slowly down the corridor with the heaviness of a man who had already lost the battle before even stepping onto the field. He knew Jungkook, knew how deeply he felt, how fiercely he trusted once he let someone in. Breaking that trust was like dropping a crystal glass. It didn't matter if the cracks were visible or not. It would never be the same again. And it was Suga's hands that had slipped. He reached the exit door, fingers trembling on the metal handle, but hesitated before stepping out. The rain beyond the glass was relentless, swallowing the streetlights into a haze of shimmering gold. He imagined Jungkook somewhere out there, soaked, shivering, hurting. The image tore something inside him, something he didn't have the strength to name. His heart felt too loud, too raw, as if every beat scraped against old wounds he'd spent years ignoring. He whispered to the glass, to the storm, to the part of him that still loved Jungkook so fiercely it terrified him. "I'll fix this somehow." The words tasted like truth and regret in equal measure, but the rain answered with silence. Above them, the city roared with life. Cars rushing, neon flickering, 1,000 windows glowing like distant stars. But for Jungkook and Suga, the world had narrowed to the space between two broken hearts, each beating with the same ache, each too afraid to move toward the other. Jungkook closed his eyes and let the cool air wash over him, wishing he could numb the ache in his chest. Suga finally stepped into the rain, letting it drench him, letting the cold bite into his skin as if punishing him for every word he failed to say. They stood in two different corners of the same storm, unaware that the wound Jungkook carried was only the beginning, and that the wound waiting for Suga would cut far deeper in the quiet space between their breaths. Something irreversible had already begun to unravel, and neither of them knew just how much was still left to lose. The rain had already eased into a thin mist when Jungkook stumbled into his apartment, slamming the door behind him with a force that made the frame shake. His breath came in sharp bursts, the shock still vibrating through his bones. He pressed both palms to his face, dragging them slowly down as if he could peel the memory of Suga's expression off his skin. But it stayed, those wide, startled eyes, that silence that felt like a blade. His phone buzzed once on the table. He didn't move toward it. He couldn't. If it was Suga, he didn't trust himself to hear whatever excuse or apology might come. And if it wasn't Suga, that hurt too. He sank to the floor, back against the cabinet, legs folding beneath him. The room was dim, the only light coming from the street lamp bleeding through his curtains. He let his head fall back, eyes burning with exhaustion and disbelief. The doorbell suddenly rang, long and insistent, and Jungkook flinched. His chest tightened so sharply it hurt. No one came to his place without warning. No one except Jungkook. A voice called from behind the door, low and rough. "Open up, please." He froze. Suga. Not a hallucination. Not a memory. Not a dream. His pulse hammered violently as he stared at the door, torn between slamming himself deeper into silence or ripping it open and letting every question he'd been swallowing explode out of him. Suga pressed his forehead to the door, voice trembling in a way Jungkook had never heard before. "I know you're there. Don't shut me out." The ache inside Jungkook twisted so sharply it stole his breath. He stood slowly, his legs unsteady, and walked toward the door like a man approaching a fire, drawn in by the heat, even knowing it could burn him alive. That he unlocked it. When he opened the door, Suga stood there drenched from the rain, hair dripping, jacket clinging to him, chest rising with uneven breaths. His eyes lifted, meeting Jungkook's with something fragile and desperate. Jungkook hated that his heart reacted first. "What do you want?" Jungkook asked, his voice low and dangerously calm. Suga swallowed hard, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Jungkook didn't stop him. He didn't trust himself to touch him, not even to push him away. The air between them snapped with tension, thick and electric. Suga stood a few feet away, dripping water onto the floor, but he didn't seem to notice. His focus was entirely on Jungkook. "You didn't let me explain." Jungkook laughed, sharp, humorless. "Explain what? That you wrote all those things and hid them? That everything I thought we were, everything I believed, was just me being stupid?" Suga's jaw tightened. "You're not stupid, and nothing you believed was wrong." "Then why?" Jungkook stepped closer, eyes burning. "Did you make me feel like I meant nothing to you?" Suga opened his mouth, but no sound came out. That silence tore something inside Jungkook. He shoved Suga's shoulder with both hands, not enough to hurt him, just enough to feel something shift, something react. "Say something. Anything. Just tell me I'm not insane for feeling this way." Suga caught Jungkook's wrists, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop him from pushing again. His voice cracked. You're not insane. You never were. Then why did you pull away from me? Jungkook whispered, his voice breaking. Why did you act like I was a mistake? Suga's breath hitched. He loosened his grip, but he didn't let go entirely. His fingers trembled as he held Jungkook, as if he were something fragile and precious. I was scared, Suga said softly, the words slipping out like a confession dragged from two deep wounds. Of what you made me feel. Of how much I cared. It was too much. You were too much. Jungkook's eyes widened, tears pricking despite his effort to hold them back. So instead of telling me, you pushed me away? You let me think I misread everything. I thought distance would protect us, Suga said, pain twisting his expression. I thought if I stepped back, your life would stay easier. Cleaner. Safer. You're, Jungkook, you're built for light. And he shook his head. I've only ever known how to survive in shadows. Jungkook felt something shiver through him. Fury, longing, disbelief, heartbreak all tangled into something overwhelming. He stepped closer until their breaths mingled in the narrow space between them. You don't get to decide what I can handle, Jungkook said, voice trembling. You don't get to run away and call it protection. Suga's eyes softened, and he lifted a shaking hand, hovering it near Jungkook's cheek before pulling it back as if afraid to cross a line they no longer understood. You're right. I don't get to decide. His voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't want to ruin you. Jungkook's laugh was soft and devastating. You didn't ruin me, Hyung. You broke me. Suga's face collapsed into pain so raw Jungkook felt it in his own chest. I know, Suga said, voice barely audible. I know. And if you walk away now, I'll deserve it. Jungkook stepped back, his expression tightening as something heavy settled onto his shoulders. The rain outside tapped against the window like impatient fingers, urging him to answer, to decide, to choose. Suga watched him with eyes that looked like they'd been holding back storms for years. Jungkook exhaled slowly, his voice dropping into something softer but sharper than any yell. I don't want your silence. I don't want your fear. I don't want your distance. If you want to be in my life, you have to stop disappearing on me. Suga nodded, almost too quickly. I can. I will. You've said that before. Suga's voice steadied in a way that made Jungkook's breath catch. Not like this. Not after tonight. There was a beat of electric stillness. Jungkook's next words came out barely above a whisper. Then prove it. Suga didn't answer with promises. Instead, he stepped close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth radiating from his rain-soaked body. Suga raised his hand again, slowly, cautiously, this time letting his fingertips brush Jungkook's cheek, tender and trembling. I'm here, Suga murmured. Jungkook closed his eyes at the touch, pain and relief mixing into something too deep to name. When he opened them again, Suga was still there, still looking at him like he was something worth breaking for. And for the first time that night, Jungkook let himself breathe. The night felt heavier than before, thick with too many words left unsaid and too many emotions that had grown claws. Jungkook stood in front of Suga, still feeling the warmth of his touch cooling on his cheek, but nothing inside him was calm. The silence between them buzzed like a wire stretched too tight, ready to snap from the slightest wrong move. Suga took a small step back, as if afraid he had crossed some invisible line, but Jungkook grabbed his wrist before he could retreat further. His grip was firm, not angry, just desperate enough to keep Suga from disappearing into another silence. You can't walk away again, Jungkook said, voice low and trembling. Not tonight. Suga's eyes flickered, something dark and vulnerable swimming just beneath the surface. I'm not walking away. Then stop looking like you're planning your escape route, Jungkook whispered, his breath brushing Suga's skin. Suga let out a shaky exhale. Force of habit. Jungkook hated how honest that sounded. How painfully true. The room felt too small, too intimate, the air dense with everything their bodies said even when their mouths didn't. Jungkook ran his thumb along Suga's wrist, slow, deliberate, almost testing the reality of him. What was in the rest of the letter? Jungkook asked. The parts one didn't see. Suga's breath stilled. His gaze dropped, lashes casting shadows against his cheek. You really want to know? I wouldn't ask if I didn't. Suga hesitated for a heartbeat, maybe two. Then he stepped past Jungkook. moving toward the small table in the corner where Jungkook's keys still glistened with rain. He pulled the envelope from inside his jacket, setting it down with a gentleness that felt almost ceremonial. Jungkook approached slowly, each step careful, controlled, but his pulse thundered loud in his ears. Suga placed a finger on the crease of the envelope. I wrote about why I pulled away, why I thought you were better off without me, why I thought the world would treat you kinder if you weren't tied to someone like me. Jungkook's eyes sharpened. Someone like you? Suga didn't flinch. Someone whose past isn't clean. Someone who's made mistakes that still cling to him. Someone who, his voice cracked, doesn't know how to love without hurting the person he cares about. Jungkook felt something twist in his chest, sharp and sudden. He grabbed the envelope but didn't open it. His eyes stayed locked on Suga's. You hurt me more by hiding, Jungkook said, not by loving me. Suga stared at him, the words seeming to hit him too hard. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to step closer but wasn't sure he had the right. Jungkook, his voice was rough. You don't understand. You're not supposed to be something I cling to. You're supposed to shine, to flourish. And you think I can't do that with you? Jungkook stepped closer, eyes burning. You think loving you makes me weaker? Suga didn't answer. Jungkook grabbed the front of Suga's jacket, pulling him close enough that their foreheads nearly touched. You don't get to decide what strengthens or destroys me. That's my choice. Suga swallowed hard, his breath unsteady. Jungkook could smell the rain on him. The cold air tangled with something undeniably Suga, warm, quiet, and painfully familiar. Then choose, Suga whispered. Choose right now. Tell me if you want me here or not. Because if you say no, I'll leave. I'll disappear for good, if that's what keeps you safe. Jungkook's heart lurched with something fierce and electric. Don't you dare offer to disappear again. I'm done losing you. Suga's shoulders dropped, tension bleeding from him in a painful, exhausted release. The next words climbed out of him like a confession he'd been burying for too long. Then why did you look at me like you hated me tonight? Suga whispered. Why did it feel like you were tearing everything between us apart with your eyes? Jungkook's grip loosened, softening as he cupped Suga's jaw with trembling fingers. Because I was scared. Because I thought you'd already left me without even saying goodbye. Suga's breath stuttered, and his hand rose, not confidently, but searchingly, resting gently on Jungkook's waist. It wasn't a bold touch, but it was honest, full of trembling need. That letter, Suga said. It wasn't a goodbye. It was everything I couldn't say to your face. Say it now, Jungkook whispered. Suga's eyes lifted, dark and raw. I love you. I'm terrified of it. But I do. The words hit Jungkook like a punch to the lungs. His breath caught, his eyes widened, and the tension inside him collapsed into something hot and overwhelming. He didn't realize he had moved until his hands were in Suga's hair, pulling him closer, his voice low and shaking against Suga's mouth. Then stop running from me. Suga closed the final inch between them, not with a kiss, but with a soft exhale that trembled against Jungkook's lips, an almost contact that burned hotter than any touch. I'm trying, Suga whispered. But you make it hard to breathe. Jungkook felt his pulse jump. Good. Their foreheads rested together, breaths mixing, the air thick with heat and tension. Suga's hand slipped further around Jungkook's waist, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt as if anchoring himself. Jungkook's voice dropped, intimate and fierce. If you want me, then fight for me. Don't just show up when you're scared I'll leave. Suga's thumb brushed lightly across the side of Jungkook's waist. I'm here now. Isn't that a start? It is, Jungkook said, softer now, but with an edge that made Suga look at him like he was the most dangerous and beautiful thing in the room. But I need more. I need truth. All of it. Suga nodded slowly. Then I should start at the beginning. Then start, Jungkook murmured, still holding him close. Suga took a breath, deep and steadying, preparing to unleash the past he had kept locked away for years. But neither of them expected the sudden sound outside. The loud, sharp knock on Jungkook's front door. Both froze as Jungkook's fingers tightened in Suga's hair. Suga's grip on Jungkook's waist instantly tensed. Another knock. Harder. Urgent. Suga's voice dropped to a whisper. You're not expecting anyone, right? Jungkook shook his head slowly. The third knock wasn't a knock at all. It sounded like someone trying to break in. Suga stepped in front of Jungkook without hesitation, his entire posture shifting in an instant. Tense, alert, protective, Jungkook's breath hitched, adrenaline slicing through the heat between them. "Suga," he whispered. Suga didn't look back as he stared at the door, eyes narrowing, voice deadly calm. "Stay behind me." The door shook again, harder this time, as if whoever stood outside had no intention of waiting another second. The echo vibrated through Jungkook's chest, rattling the adrenaline already burning inside him. Suga didn't flinch. He planted himself firmly between Jungkook and the door, shoulders squared, posture coiled like someone who'd been trained to expect danger even in the quietest moments. Jungkook reached for him, fingers brushing Suga's arm. "Hyung, who would come here like this?" Suga didn't answer. His jaw locked, eyes fixed on the handle as if he expected it to turn on its own. For a moment, Jungkook saw something he'd never noticed in Suga, not fear, but calculation. Like he was assessing every angle, every possible threat, every escape route. "Suga," Jungkook whispered again, voice trembling. "Tell me what you're thinking. That whoever's behind that door didn't come for you." Suga murmured, barely moving his lips. "They came for me." Jungkook's heartbeat slammed into his ribs. "What? Why?" The door handle twisted sharply. Jungkook sucked in a breath. Suga grabbed his wrist and pulled him back, positioning him near the wall, half hidden in shadow. "Suga, what's happening?" Jungkook whispered, voice cracking with a mix of fear and anger. "You're scaring me." Suga didn't look at him. "Good. Maybe now you'll understand why I tried to keep you away." Jungkook felt something inside him tear. The words burned more than the danger outside. "Don't shut me out again," he demanded, voice low but shaking. "Not now." Suga closed his eyes for one brief second, as if that tiny moment was the only thing keeping him from breaking. Then he stepped closer, cupping Jungkook's face with a trembling hand. His touch was warm despite the cold rain still dripping from his hair. "You don't deserve the parts of my life that can explode your door in," Suga whispered. "You deserve peace. And I don't know how to give you that." Jungkook's breath hitched. "I don't want peace if it means losing you." The door slammed again, and the lock rattled violently. Suga's eyes snapped open. "Get back," he said, voice suddenly hard. Jungkook didn't move. Instead, he grabbed Suga's jacket, pulling him close enough that their chests touched, close enough that the fear between them turned into something hotter, sharper. "If you go near that door without telling me the truth, I swear I'm walking out the second this ends." Suga's breath caught, because Jungkook meant it. Every single word. His lips parted, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. But before he could speak, the pounding stopped. Silence fell heavy and thick. Then a voice came from behind the door, muffled but unmistakably clear. "Yoongi, open up. We need to talk." Jungkook froze. Suga did too, but for a different reason. His eyes darkened with a mixture of dread and inevitability. The voice wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening that IT was disappointed. Deeply, dangerously disappointed, Jungkook whispered, "Who is that?" Suga didn't answer. The voice spoke again, each word sharp enough to cut through the wood. "You've been avoiding us long enough. You're dragging someone else into this mess now? Open the door." Jungkook grabbed Suga's wrist. "Us? Who is he talking about?" "Suga, what did you get yourself into?" Suga pulled his hand away, not harshly, but with the kind of hesitation that meant he wished he could say everything and yet couldn't. "Jungkook," Suga said quietly, "you need to stay calm. Whatever you hear next, don't react." "Hyung, please," Suga breathed. "Just trust me." The voice outside sighed impatiently. "Yoongi, if you don't open this door, I will." Suga exhaled, defeated. Then he did something Jungkook had never seen him do. He looked terrified, not of the person outside, but of what would happen when Jungkook found out the truth. Suga placed his hand on the lock. His fingers hovered for a second, trembling with the weight of 1,000 unspoken confessions. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Jungkook. "For all of it." And he opened the door. A tall man stood there, drenched, furious, and unbearably familiar to Jungkook's memory, even though he had no name for him. His eyes swept past Suga and landed on Jungkook instantly. "So this is him," the man said. Suga moved instinctively, shielding Jungkook with his body so fast Jungkook barely saw it happen. "Don't," Suga warned. The man raised an eyebrow. Relax. I'm not here to hurt him. I'm here to stop you from ruining both your lives. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. Who are you? The man smirked lightly, as if amused that Jungkook didn't know. He didn't tell you? Of course he didn't. Suga's fists clenched. The man stepped inside uninvited, brushing water from his hair. I'm the reason Yoongi thinks he doesn't deserve you, he said calmly. I'm the reason he wrote that letter. And I'm the reason he keeps running. Jungkook felt his blood run cold. That Suga's voice came out tight, sharp, almost pleading. Stop. But the man ignored him and looked Jungkook directly in the eyes. I'm the one who broke him first. The room stopped breathing. Jungkook stared, heart hammering, the ground beneath him tilting. Suga looked like he'd been stabbed with a ghost. Jungkook whispered, What does that mean? The man took a step closer. It means, he said slowly, that before he ever broke your heart, someone shattered his. Jungkook felt everything inside him shift. Fear, anger, confusion, a pain he didn't understand yet tightening around his ribs. Suga closed his eyes, the truth unraveling in front of him like a wound reopening. I told you, Suga whispered. There are things about me you don't want to know. Jungkook's voice trembled. Try me. And Suga looked at him with eyes so raw, so full of old scars, that Jungkook suddenly understood. Whatever was coming next wasn't just a secret. It was the beginning of everything Suga had been running from.